The following show is for mature audiences only.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a home run hire. I don't think you could have had a bigger stakes hire than that. And It's not often that you see Power 5 conference commissioners becoming, presidents of NFL teams. And for this team specifically to make this hire from outside, it's so rare. It's unprecedented. That's the word I feel like we use throughout January for so many different things. And it really embodies what this hire is for the Bears, because fourth president in team history, president and CEO, and he's the first one that hasn't been tied into the organization previously. This organization is 103 years old. The other presidents were somehow related to George Halas or had a McCaskey, influence in there too. And then there was Ted, who was promoted after 23 years initially, in the organization, which it's time. And I think that with this being their most pivotal offseason probably ever, given everything that's stacked up, whether it's a new team president, the prospect that by the end of the first quarter, they will close on the land in Arlington Heights, and Kevin Warren and his expertise in building stadiums. I mean, I don't know if you guys have been to US Bank Stadium. I know a lot of Bears fans have, because it's a quick, easy flight up to Minneapolis. I spent 5 years covering games there. That place is palatial. And if you think about all of the elements that make that stadium great, it's not just great infrastructure, it's the fan experience, which Kevin is there's no costs are spared for things like that. He goes over the top with stuff with selling ownership on, hey, this is why we need all these little things. There's not a detail that's not accounted for that I saw after he got hired. And they have the press conference, the amount of people who asked me on Twitter, does this mean that the Bears are going to get Hard Knocks? And typically the legacy organizations, the Giants, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Bears have kind of turned their nose up at Hard Knocks, saying, we don't need that. We don't want that. Almost acting in a way like those organizations are too good for Hard Knocks. Now, I don't know if that's if that's a Virginia thing, if that's something that would literally have to go all the way up to the very top. And who knows as to the real reasoning, who has the final say on that. But I get the point that some fans are trying to make there, hey, this is a brand new voice who might have a completely different perspective on something. None of those names jump off the page. If it was a Trevor Lawrence, the conversation, and even then, I don't know, if I had seen, if he was in a different draft class, if there was a version of him out there, having seen what we saw from Fields this year, it's never a guarantee that the next guy is going to be so much better than what you have. And Fields still has so much more runway here before he even takes off, right? So I think that that's something that the Bears want to explore further. And you got to be careful too when you think about a team that's going to look very different again next season. And think about what they did and all that came out after they blew up the locker room, more or less, again, in the middle of the season by trading Quinn and trading Roquan Smith. You don't want to play with fire, by doing it moreover and trading the guy that has the defense and the offense vouching for him. Those comments that Justin Jones was making following the final game, where he's talking about, imagine when we get him in a quote actual system, what it look like. You've got a defensive tackle saying that. That's not just one of your guys on offense, that's somebody on the other side of the ball. So very clearly, that would be a shakeup I don't think this team wants to make going into this offseason, because that stuff lingers longer than most people realize. And when you have somebody who is the unquestioned leader of this team and does everything right off the field, and when you can have him take steps in certain areas to get better in certain things on the field, I don't feel like it's getting off a winning horse at that point. I don't think they want to do that.
Draft Dr. Phil and the smartest man.
Keeping it 100.
Chicago's trading up.
100.
Yes! What? Here it is! Just reporting.
The tape never lies.
Other people drop off, but we still keep rocking.
You'll never know how good your football team's going to be until you play with maximum effort.
Keeping it 100.
Open competition over the North and never give it back.
Smartest man.
My Chicago Bears select Justin Fields, quarterback, Ohio State.
Guess who's back? The two dudes that kept it real. Dynamic duo that you love, the smartest man in Dr. Phil. Breaking down the film, never a problem, kick it straight. Most shows focus on stats, we focus on the tape. We keeping it 100, never running east to west. We coming with that truth, cause that's what our fans expect. Cut off the freaking anchor, forward to be free. But don't you worry, Shane's got the dumbest tweets. It ain't no secret, Phil and Shane got some haters. But now them out stuck like the now-and-laters. Debaters, frauds get kicked like Coach Tabor. Cuts had to be made, we added the barber moderator. Up and down, boys got you double checking. Sad sacks trolling like a fool, drunk texting. Flexing on the truth cause you know they never change. Real, recognize real, that's what you get with Phil and Shane. Give me some fucking names. We do when we're breaking down the Bears. Fuck a play or a captain, all of the unchair. The tape never lies. The truth, you see, we laugh, we analyze, so there's no babies like Maybelline. Straight to the truth with acumen and facts. We got a stat nerd, but he's not just giving nerd stats. Car crash, big impact like Trip Sack. Every Wednesday night you got the smartest man and Phil back. Now we know you're smiling like a fat kid with fun dip. We're back better than ever and we keeping it 100.
Keeping it 100, baby.
Keep it 100. Draft Dr. Phil and the smartest man.
Justin Fields gets outside the pocket, puts that ball perfectly where only Mooney can get it. 1
Keeping it 100.
2 feet.
Draft Dr. Phil and the smartest man.
Keeping it 100, baby.
Keeping it 100.
Draft Dr. Phil and the smartest man.
Keeping it 100, baby.
Keep it 100.
Keeping it 100.
Church never lies.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, this is Claudia Lamar, and this is TTNL 100, the best show on the planet. Listen, we're going to do we got a great show for you tonight. We got the creator of the rookie scouting portfolio back on. Our guy, your guy, part of the TTNL family, Matt Waldman, is back on. So let's bring on the boys. Shane, the smartest man, Marcel, and there he is, Draft Dr. Phil. What is up, boys?
What is up?
Can't hear the music, though, but that's all right.
We had to turn it down because you were getting bled out. I don't know.
Okay, well, as long as they can hear it.
Maybe we got to make its own YouTube feed and put it up like Shane does with it. I don't know what StreamYard is doing.
We'll clean it up in post.
Yeah.
As soon as we get back from the beach, we'll fix that shit up.
Oh, shit.
As soon as we get back from the beach, we got a good show tonight. I'm excited about our guest, and he's excited. He's ready to jump right out the gate. I think we bring him out straight out. Bring him out. Where's Jay-Z? It ain't Beyonce and Jay-Z, but this dude, let's bring him out the way we do. We actually had to update his intro, even though Shane will be a little mad because I had to keep the same music for the guy because he loves it so much. Let's bring him out from the rookie scouting portfolio, the draft guru, our guy, Matt Waldman.
Well, it's that time of year again, Bears fans. And our favorite guy, he's back. Once we flipped the calendar, there was only one man for us to call.
We got a dope.
To help us kick off our NFL draft coverage. The rookie scouting portfolio creator.
Give me some fucking names.
has set it all up to help get you prepared. You won't find another more comprehensive NFL draft guide out there. Bears fans, TTNL fans, you are now on the clock. And with the first pick of the NFL draft, TTNL Network selects Hugo.
What?
Give it up for Hugo's dad, Matt Waldman.
There he is.
I don't know whether to be embarrassed or to feel like I could lay out, truck Ray Lewis after that. I don't know. I kind of feel a little bit of both.
You got us. I go with the Ray Lewis.
Yeah.
I would love to see it too.
I would love to see it too, but I don't think it'll ever happen. But I definitely, I think I could lay out John Elway though. I think I'm still late in anger to do that. But thank you so much, guys. Man, I've been looking forward to this all season. So man, just seeing the response from people listening right now, all the leading up to this has just been awesome. So thank everybody.
It's a big off season around here when you're the shittiest team in the NFL. So we wanted to kick it off the right way, but we got to ask you right out the gate, Matt, how is the transition with Hugo going? I've been following you on Facebook with it, and that's usually it can be kind of hit and miss the first few days, but how's that been going?
It's been pretty good. He's taking a little doggy vacation because the person who rescued him, we let him go out and play with the dogs out in the country, out in Athens for a little bit, so that he can get a little socialization in. Yeah. But he's good. He's dragging me around the neighborhood about 3-4 miles a day, and he's a sweetheart. Actually, he's a great dog. Though I got to say, he thinks he's a running back, and I think he's more of a linebacker because he keeps dropping the ball. But then, as I've joked on social media, he actually found a football on our walk and wouldn't let it go the next day. And I think it was after my tweet saying that he was more linebacker than running back because he couldn't hold on to the ball. So I'm thinking he's stubborn enough maybe to get another tryout for this. He does hit like Adrian Peterson, I will say that. So,
well, if he sees the linebacker contracts, they're a lot better than the running back contracts, so that's not a bad thing, right?
That's true too. But he lives in this household, so I think I think he feels like he's got to fit in. But I don't mind a linebacker, to be honest with you, as long as he's not barreling down at me again. So we're all good.
It's great to have you back here. Obviously, one of our favorites. Obviously, the chat is a flutter. It's almost like the 4th of July. Waldman's on the air, and everybody has a positive thought. And I think that's how you carry yourself, Matt, energetically. You're just a great friend and a great person. And I think that resonates in the depth with which you go into detail about these draft wannabes, really, these guys that are getting into the draft, and your detailed description just showcases the kind of empathy I think is necessary for someone who's going to scout talent. You have to have that compassionate side as well as that understanding adversity side, what's going to be faced. And there is no greater depths that I see that anybody goes other than you. And it's a testament to you, the person. And I think we always, and I know Shane will be the first in line to tell people, you love the draft, go out there and get RSP. And
amazing. Appreciate it.
It is what it is. And I wanted to say those kind words to you because they're true.
Well, thank you very much.
I appreciate you very much as a friend. And
if the listeners can only hear what we were talking about pre-show, waxing poetic. He knows I'm coming. That's why. Right, Claude?
I fucked your mom.
That's what I love about this show, though,
Yeah.
too, because it can go from one range to the other, one end of the spectrum to the other, and it feels like home as a result of that. I did a show for a number of years, the Audible, at Football Guys, where Cecil Lammey and Sigmund Bloom and Gene Bramall and I had that kind of feel, and so it was immediate the first time that ever on this show that it felt like that, and the difference was I didn't have to say sorry, Joe, to our wonderful owner, Joe Bryan at Football Guys, because I could say fuck you and it wouldn't matter,
Right.
So it's almost an added bonus on that level, and you guys are fantastic. It's great, the rapport, the level of knowledge that you guys have, the ability to want to delve in a variety of topics and just keep it fun, because everybody wants to have fun doing this. And
got to
and you understand. I mean, we're all fans of teams that have had their moments where they were unbelievable, maybe for brief moments in our lifetime, and then we've had down moments through that.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to have a sense of humor with it, but you're still, especially because a lot of people are dedicated fans to these seminal teams in the league, and there's no team other than the Bears that you could say that is they are the team of the NFL when you think of historically, what the NFL is about. So, I'll say this. I mean, it was fun watching Justin Fields this year. From my perspective, I thought he was, I thought he made strides. He absolutely made strides. And I love what they could do with some of the things they did with the run game. Still some work to do along that line. But, between David Montgomery and Khalil Herbert, they had a really nice 1-2 punch there. I've always been a Herbert fan, so it was nice to see that when they needed him, he could produce when called upon. And, it's just another step at a time here. And now we're looking at the draft, and you guys have a good bit of picks, and what are you going to do? Well, maybe you do. Yeah.
Hopefully
you will. That's the big part. And
it's
I wonder
1947 since the last time the Bears held the first overall pick. Yeah. And that's where we start. Well, you start with Justin Fields, so I'm kind of on a ledge here, balancing beam. Should I talk to you more about Justin? But you bring up the draft picks that we're going to have. Kind of everybody seems to be in that lane. Do you think that's the move to make? Kind of hold other teams that need quarterbacks, and there's plenty of them, hostage to kind of pull a draft haul to set up Justin Fields? I guess I could bring this to two parts and bring Justin back into it, because it's hard to analyze Justin, the quarterback, based on the surrounding talent that he had. So the draft haul would make sense, in my opinion. I want to hear your thoughts to get a proper understanding. Is Justin Fields the future and beyond?
Yeah, I think he's the future and beyond. And if he isn't, I would bet my career as a GM on going down with the ship with Justin Fields, because I think that you've seen enough in terms of his willingness to work, the improvement from last year's disaster, the 2021 disaster, and what he's been able to do beyond that. You've seen the moments. It's just that, does he have the optimal surrounding talent in terms of the offensive line, in terms of, the types of receivers that you want to have, the tweaks to the offense that you would want to make that really allow you to see the best of him and maximize his skills. And it takes more than one season to really know what your quarterback does best sometimes, especially when you've had so many changes, and especially when you went from just a shit show with, we won't mention his name, to this past year, and you're still trying to add and change talent around. And part of it too is, what schematic adjustments can we make now that we've seen Fields acclimate to the changes that we made last year. And I think that from that perspective, certainly there's some good quarterbacks in this class. I mean, I'm a fan of probably 3 of them. I think that could turn out to be good starters, maybe even really good starters, maybe even guys who might be statistically better than Fields will be. Okay. But does it really fucking matter that a guy got like 300 to 500 yards more in a season if you're playing so well that you've won 8 more games than that dude? I mean, and Justin Fields is good enough for that I think for the team to be able to become a playoff contender for years to come if he has the support system. And right now, when I look at the Bears receivers, just to start there, I understand the Chase Claypool trade in theory. You're trying to upgrade and you're trying to get a player who can offer big plays for you. I think Claypool is that guy that if you can move him around, kind of like Kenny Galladay, if you move him around and you have 2 good receivers that can command, that can create binds in the secondary, then you can match Claypool up in scenarios where he can really become a big play artist for you. But if you're asking him to be the number 1, I think he still hasn't proven that, and I don't think he's going to. And that's something that the Steelers, I mean, when I first watched Claypool after the first 6 games in his rookie year, I basically showed the difference between how the first 5 teams played him and then what the next 2 teams played him. And once teams started to get the book on what to do with him, he really never returned to that level of play. And it was because they had Deontay Johnson, they had Juju Smith-Schuster, they had guys who could really take the pressure off of Claypool, and defenses were more focused on those guys early on, and they would allow Claypool to have a little more space to operate. And I think that now when you look at this offense, they need 1 to 2 guys who can be flexible enough for them to move Claypool around either inside or outside. Because Claypool, I think, functions best. They use him a lot outside and having him do jump balls and contested stuff. But I think he would work best as a receiver that you put inside and having on routes breaking outside. So it's more of like that tight end, move tight end, big slot type of thing where you're not going to use him there all the time, but you can use him on sail routes. You can use him on deep over routes, on play action passes where he's winning against zone more than he's getting matched up against man. And you need receivers who can play multiple roles, I think, for that to happen. So I think there's some guys in this class that might fit that bill. I don't think it's a great wide receiver class, unfortunately, this year compared to the past 2 to 3 years. But there's some guys that we'll talk about later that I think that can be good. There's some great tight ends in this class. That if you might just decide if you're going to be able to get extra picks that maybe you go with a dynamic tight end. But for me, I've had this conversation with Russ Landy, the former Browns and Rams scout who works in the CFL and on my show on a regular basis. And we talked about this, like, what would you do? And we both agreed we'd go down the ship with Fields. And that really, if anything, it would be if you could convince somebody in the league enough that they believe that you might actually take the quarterback they wanted, then we could possibly get those picks. Now, I'm a little skeptical at this point whether that they're going to be able to do that. But then again, the 49ers were able to convince people they were taking Mac Jones back in like March and April, later on than that. So
let me ask, I don't want to step on your toes here, Matt, but do you think it's more so maybe they don't have to convince other teams that they're going to do it rather than they have to convince the teams that Houston's going to take their quarterback?
That's a very good point. And that's definitely possible.
Because then you're working Houston and Indy within the same division again. All right, you don't want to give up what we want. You're going to face this guy for the next 12 years in Houston.
Yeah.
You're saying that to Indy. I think that's the play. I think everybody knows at this point, I know that everybody, the media click bullshit with, ship Justin. And to me, that none of that made sense. To me, the play has always been Houston's going to take your guy.
Yeah.
Not us.
I think that's a much better thought process because then you're getting into the whole idea of like, will Justin go along with the program of saying, hey, listen, if Bryce Young comes here, I'll compete with him and kind of bristle, even though he knows he's the guy the whole time. Do you really want him doing that acting job? I mean, maybe he's in for that if you convince him of that possibility, but why, that's more work than it's worth. Why not just why not just play the teams off of each other? And it may not be the haul that Bears fans wish they could get due to this circumstance, but I think they're going to wind up with some picks that they can parlay into more players.
Yeah, like Adam Schefter was on Waddle and Sylvie tonight, and this is a direct quote from Adam Schefter. I'm sorry. He was on Waddle and Sylvie, and he said the Bears are going to have the opportunity to listen to some unbelievable offers for the number 1 pick. That pick is going to be worth a small fortune, and the Bears are holding a lottery ticket if they want to cash it in. But to your point, I mean, even if you move to number 2 and you can get just number 33 from Houston, to me, that's a massive win.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's absolutely.
You're pulling the pick you traded back for Claypool. Basically.
Yeah,
that's what you'd be
32 to 33.
doing. And then the other thing is, my father was on the patron show, and me, Shane, we were breaking down Will Anderson. If you're not a patron, do yourself a favor, go over there. My father is in the belief system, Matt, that don't fuck around with these picks. This is a blue chip generational talent in Will Anderson. He's the kind of guy, he compared him to Lawrence Taylor. He's a game wrecker. He's young. You don't have to question his desire to be great or love of the game. Sometimes you have to question that with this kid, you don't. He's powerful. He's built like an Adonis. He brings everything the Bears need. They have a need there. The Holy Trinity. You got your Justin. Here's your Will Anderson. Now you look at Detroit with what they've done with their young defensive. And Shane, the numbers on Will Anderson, 3 seasons, 206 or 7 pressures.
206 pressures. Yeah. The next closest over the last few years was Myles Garrett with 164
in 4 years.
Well, he was in Aiden Hutchinson was 4 years.
Aiden Hutchinson.
He had 145 in 4 years. Yeah.
So 207 pressures, not sacks, just getting to the quarterback. I mean, that showcases this kind of football player. So let me ask you, as a guy that I would trust building a team, my father's in the lane, and he's adamant. Don't fuck around. Get Will Anderson. Now you got 2 alphas, Justin and Will on both sides, and you build there. There's plenty of talent in the draft and free agency. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, first, I'm always a believer in building from the trenches out. I think that's when you have, and especially when you have top players available in the trenches, you can work with skill talent that may not be the high draft capital skill talent and still find solid enough players. I mean, the Cleveland Browns really, if they just didn't wreck their window with Baker Mayfield, would have been fine because of the fact that they built such a good offensive line and they started in the trenches on that side, and then having Myles Garrett. And then the second thing is, listen, I don't study too many guys in the trenches because my priority is skill players, but I'll just say this, I watch a lot of Alabama. I watch a lot of teams against Alabama. And to put it just simplistically, when you're watching tape and you see a guy who looks like he's been superimposed on the tape, it's like if you took like a pro football player and said, we're going to stick him in like a playground game and watch him move around wrecking people, that's what Will Anderson looks like just from without even studying. It's like, who's this? Why did they take Joe Green and put him out of 70s tape and put him in put him on this playground. Like, this isn't fair.
Exactly.
There's moments like that with Will Anderson. So I understand it. And I would totally agree that you do that, because your trench players, that's where you are going to make a huge difference with your teams. I mean, think about the Houston Texans when they were a playoff team, or barely a playoff team, but they were barely a playoff team with basically either an aging cast of skill talent and J.J. Watt. J.J. Watt was a huge reason why this team was as good as it was for so long, with middling talent. And you already had, and then they got Deshaun Watson, and now this team seemed to be more of a favorite, but Watson needed more seasoning. They didn't have the great talent around them, but you could see where the steps were going to be taken if this organization didn't implode and have all the dysfunction that it did. But you could see that if you have a guy like Will Anderson and he plays to his potential, you've taken that next step.
It's a generational haul or generational player. And that's Ryan Poles' job right now to decide, because I get both sides. I'm really, honestly, I'm the biggest Will Anderson fan.
I think you're at the point now where there's been so much smoke to the trade down. I think Bears fans will be disappointed if they don't move down and get, accumulate more assets, because this roster is so barren.
But to that point, Shane, you have to be the guy. I think my father was so impressed with you when you said they could sign 3 top-tier free agents.
Yeah. That's how much money
they have enough money to spend on more free agents,
and it's not a great free agent class, but the part where you have to stay true to your board is everybody, when you're talking about the draft, and Matt, you know this, you've been around enough people. If they're talking about 2 blue chip prospects, they're talking about Jalen Carter and Will Anderson up top. They're essentially dismissing everybody else, and there is a gap. But how Ryan Poles and Ian Cunningham may have another blue chip guy. They may have, like I said, it could be. I'm not saying that I'm there, but they may be very high on Paris Johnson, and they can move down and bring in an offensive tackle to surround and make your quarterback, make your offensive line room better. It's all gonna depend on how they have it. I mean, I know everybody's been talking to me. The sleeping giant about trading up is Carolina. I think that they're ripe with the assets to move up, and they got Frank Reich in there, and he's going to be able to handpick his own young quarterback. And I think that that's the team, and they got some young assets to go with the ammo draft wise to come up. But it's going to be interesting, man, because
listen, if it were me, I would definitely get Anderson. I would definitely take the picks you have, and understand this. This is not a class where I would be drafting a wide receiver in the first round.
No,
so
totally.
You don't need a running back, really. I don't think, at least not in the early rounds. You can get one later, but this is a class. I know you've got Cole Kmet, and there's promise with Cole Kmet, and he's a solid all-around player. But I'm going to tell you, in the second round, you could probably get a guy out of Utah by the name of Dalton Kincaid.
Oh, and boy, here comes Ben Ricketts.
There's Ricketts.
And I know that
people rubbing one out on his living room floor right now.
And I know that people like Michael Mayer, and I think Michael Mayer is an excellent player. So I wouldn't lose my mind if the Bears said, look, he's down the road, let's take him. We love our Notre Dame players. Fine. But Dalton Kincaid is a promising blocker, not as polished as Mayer, but you don't need him to be if you got Kmet blocking. They said
the same thing about Greg Olsen when he came out. that he couldn't block.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Nobody cared.
Dalton Kincaid can block. He can't block great right now, but he will get better. But what he can do is catch the fuck out of the football in a way where you can match him up. He is the closest thing to Travis Kelce that I've seen since I watched Travis Kelce.
Wow.
He's a contested catch guy. He is someone that runs good routes. He breaks tackles consistently in the open field. He makes people miss in the open field. And I think to me, he has a grade that rivaled the kid out of Atlanta, Kyle Pitts, in terms of what I saw right now for me. And
that's huge.
Yeah, I like Kyle. I mean, Kyle Pitts was my top guy. He and Pat Fryermuth, I love both of them. But listen, Kincaid is a better all-around player, if you ask me, than what Kyle Pitts is. Kyle Pitts is maybe more dangerous as a outside receiver, but you can, with the Bears who want to run the ball, who want to be able to use Fields' legs, when you have two tight end sets, it's so difficult to defend two tight end sets. So if you can't get the receivers you want, go two tight ends more often, leverage your run game, be able to do a little bit of what the Ravens do without going as far down that road as they have with some, without having receivers at all. But like in free agency, I mean, you've got guys who are available, who nice all-around players who can help you out. Jacoby Myers, if they can pry him out of the Patriots camp,
I think that's the we talked about it last night. Well, Ryan Cox, a friend of our network, has been all over. I think that is. I think there's people out there thinking that Ryan Poles is just going to be, going formerly Washington Redskins crazy in free agency and the dream team in Philly. But I think that they're going to go after a guy like Jacoby Myers. And I brought this up with Phil, Matt, and you can speak to this. Cole Kmet still ascending, 23 years old. You bring in a guy like Kincaid or even another veteran tight end, that makes him better.
Yes.
It makes his job easier. And who is that better for? That's better for Justin Fields, having two guys that he can rely on.
And if you don't want Kincaid, you don't want to spend that capital, or you're afraid you're not going to get him, go pick up Foster Moreau with the Raiders. I know he's dropped a couple of big passes.
Loved him in the draft.
But he is a top 10 potential tight end in terms of production. He's a good blocker. He's got that kind of meat grinder mentality that you want to have. He is a good receiver, very quick. So, don't get Gesicki. Please, God, don't get Gesicki. I know people like that guy, but like he's not a blocker. He's also not a well-rounded route runner. He's more of a space player. You don't need that. Like if you're going to go a direction where you don't get quite the top end Dalton Kincaid type. You want someone who can do what Cole Kmet does, and you have two guys like that are hard to defend. So Moreau's one of those guys. Dalton Schultz isn't exactly that kind of guy, but he's a good blocker. You can get him in the shallow range of the field, so he can be a good check down option.
Like Schultz.
Austin Hooper. I mean, I know that he gets, he's one of those guys maybe as an aging option that you could look at. Robert Tonyan, maybe not a great blocker, but he's certainly a good receiver in 1 year coming off of that injury. Maybe you can get those guys cheaper, but if you can't get Foster Moreau, you go after Dalton Kincaid, or you go after one of these
goes in the first round. There's been talk of that. There's been talk of that as of late.
If he has a great combine, it could happen, but I think probably early second round is where he could wind up. And you might trade up, if you get that high second round pick, then maybe you trade up to say, what, we'll get him.
I talk about this team an awful lot because everybody in my family is a fan of them, but they believe in the tight end and they're playing in the Super Bowl, and that's Philly. I wouldn't be surprised if Philly.
So does the other team.
Right, but that's what I'm saying to Pat. They always seemingly have two guys that they invest in at tight end, and you imagine putting a guy like Kincaid with Dallas Goedert to give Jalen Hurts moving forward? That's a scary fucking proposition.
Kincaid is outstanding football. Same with Mayer. I like both of them. I don't want to leave the draft. I want to ask you some of those, but I want to say this. I'm on the fence with Cole Kmet. I'm okay because he has another year on his deal, but I just see too much jumping in the cat. I don't see a fucking dog. I need that, Matt. So I think Morrow has that dog in him. Cole Kmet he's hot and cold. Sometimes I've seen him drop his pads on tape in 3 seasons now? 4? No, 3.
Yeah, just finished year 3.
Maybe on one hand, 5 plays. Like that softness, like he wants to juke and his feet aren't on. He jumps to catch a ball that's in the flat. Like you don't need to jump, speed turn, and drop your pads. This guy is not the future, in my opinion, unless he wakes up and show it. This was the year I wanted to see him wake up. Now, there's moments for the guy, but it's too hot and cold for me. That's why Kincaid, when you say that, I don't question Kincaid on tape, just like I didn't question George Kittle. I just knew that was a fucking guy that wanted the ball. Those are the guys the Bears need, Matt. So that's what I need when you're looking at these draftable players. Kincaid jumps off for me as one of the guys I circled. Like, this is a guy, because I want to say one other thing, and then you could talk about, I'm going to throw some Ryan Poles. If you listen to his end of the year presser, he said exactly what the genius Matt Waldman just said. He said, listen, receivers are great. We got receiver, whatever. And the way he worded it, I'm paraphrasing, the tight end position comes into key here. And he emphasized that, how important it was. And we saw Ryan Griffin and who was the other guy we had? They just, Wesco.
Yeah,
they didn't.
He's a blocking.
He's just a blocking. Yeah. There's no help. And we all know what a young quarterback's best friend is a tight end. So let's look at some of these tight ends in the draft. The kid from Iowa, they seem to grow them. Sam Laporta. What are your thoughts on him? And what about the kid from Oregon State, Musgrave? Is he related to Bill Musgrave?
He is. Yes, he is. He's the nephew of Bill Musgrave.
Oh,
I was just talking to Chad Ryder yesterday, and happy birthday to Chad.
Happy birthday, Chad.
Yeah. So, but we were talking about what we thought about this class, and he was mentioning him. But, to start with Laporta, listen, he's a good receiver. And I think that's one of the things that probably he's not as good of a blocker as some of the Iowa tight ends have been. So you're kind of getting a guy who is probably better as a stock blocker, more in that mold of where you're going to play him outside, detached from the formation more often, or he's going to be that backside guy who isn't going to, you probably would want Kmet blocking more often if Kmet's, you keep Kmet for another year or however long his contract is. It doesn't mean that he can't develop, but because he shows that he can do some things that you'd like rolling through the hips when he punches. That he shows some ability to earn position after working in space, and he can reach, defenders on wind back assignments or pulling assignments. But he's kind of more of a one-off striker who doesn't sustain or doesn't deliver with power. So that's the thing that he's going to have to develop, and that means also adding a little bit more weight to his frame, a little more strength, because he's 249. He's 6'4", 249. At least that's his listed weight. And you probably want to see him at 260 if you're going to use him in that capacity.
Right.
And then on top of that, he doesn't show that mentality right now. So now you're trying to count on him to develop that. And I think that's tough to do. So I like Laporta. I think he can be an asset in a passing game, but he's when I think of him compared to, say, Luke Musgrave, Luke Musgrave to me is more of a Tyler Higbee type. And Higbee may not have been unbelievably productive for the Rams off and on due to injury, but Higbee's got a little dog in him. And when you look at Musgrave, his blocking, probably needs to get a little bit better, but he combo blocks well. I think he slides across the formation really well, and he earns good position. He does roll through the hips when he punches, and he follows up. And he does a good job of, really being strong with his punch and position on reach blocks. He's consistently good at cutoff blocks against backside defensive ends and linebackers. He's not, so those are some good things here. He's low out of his stance when he's in a 3-point stance. He does well with quick hitting runs. And he really cultivates a deep bend to get low, though he can overextend. But you can correct the overextension. It's more the willingness to hit, the willingness to get low in the first place, because a lot of guys don't want to bend their knees or hips or can do it. And then when you start talking about just the things that's not even the stuff he's really good at. Like the stuff that he's really good at is catching the football. He has violent hands at the top of stems. He has some quick releases. He can stack defenders, which is great for the vertical game. He's someone that really has good acceleration for a tight end. I think he could work past some flat-footed safeties up the seam. He's not going to make the long corner, say, on a linebacker when he's, on any type of play where they might, have him as a runner. But he's quick enough to make linebackers work to reach him after the catch. And I think that as a route runner, he does have some good setups. He understands how to take the back of defenders, swat past opponents up the seam. He has some flat footwork to get, flat breaks that is, going to make him a little bit more reliable. He can drop his weight. So that he's going to be able to come to sudden stops, which are very important on most tight end type of routes underneath. And then just from catching the football, listen, he high points well. He can make sliding low catches. He's, he has occasional lapses where he clap attacks football. Kind of olive Gabe Davis in Buffalo. But it's one of those things that when I say occasional, I watched 23 targets of his before that I saw him gator clap a ball or clap attack a ball. So it's not like it's a huge issue. Yeah, it's just occasional lapse. But overall, this is a guy that may not be Travis Kelce, but he's certain. Greg Olsen. When I think of Greg Olsen and how good he was, I think he has a potential to maybe be a Greg Olsen type of player, which was still really darn good. And so Musgrave's nice. And if you're going to look, I'd like to bring up some guys that if you're going to look later than like the first 3 to 4 rounds.
Is there a guy from Alabama in there?
No,
he's higher. I think he's higher. No?
You like him?
Yeah, he's not perfect. Talking about Latu. Yeah.
Latu. Yeah. I'm not as big of a fan of Latu as you guys are, but and part of that is that he is a clap attacker as a catcher.
Yep. That's what, when you said that, that's what made me bring it up, because 100%.
Yeah, he does clap the ball a fair bit, and I'm not seeing the same dynamic level of athletic ability that projects well as a top route runner. I think he is definitely a contributor. He is definitely a solid to good blocker. And I think you could use him as a short range target and get mileage out of him for sure. He's going to be in the NFL, and I think he'll play in the NFL for a good period of time.
He's
but
tough too.
He is tough.
He's not like this prima donna. He puts his face in there.
Oh, no doubt. But I also think you can get a guy like Tucker Kraft out of South Dakota State, who has a little. Yeah, he can block. He can move reasonably well. He's a rugged player. I think there's upside for him as a receiver. I think Daniel Barker with Michigan State as a late round pick really adjusts well to the football, shows some skill at Michigan State as an inline blocker. Now, again, we're talking a late round pick, so that may not pan out, but I think there's more upside to mine with a guy like him that I would be I would feel pretty good about looking at what he has to value.
What are your thoughts on my late round guy from the other side of that rivalry, from Michigan?
Luke's.
Yes.
I love Luke Schoonmaker.
I think he's like a sleeping giant in this. I really do think
he's in my top 5 right now in terms of just what I've seen on the board. I think he's maybe the best blocker in this class. And he certainly adjusts pretty smoothly as a receiver. I mean, like when I think about
he catches with his eyes and just doesn't care.
Yeah.
He makes those big plays. Connecticut kid, no bias here. I just see the God. I see this. He has a dog in him. That's what I want as a catcher. We can see if I know he's a willing blocker. You might put him as the best blocker in this draft. Some people have, but I just think there's a lot there to like.
The biggest thing I don't think his short area quickness is as effective when he's detached outside in like say RPO type looks. You don't really want him.
The same thing with Komet.
Yeah.
I don't know why they do that with him.
Yeah.
I'm like, he's not twitchy.
Yeah, Kincaid you could put out there and you're going to get that all day long.
Yes.
Okay. But with Schoonmaker, I think that I'm pronouncing it right, is, you want him more in the box as a lead blocker. He's technically sound. You can use him to filter out on play action. He's certainly, as a pass catcher, look, he can drop his weight in his stems. He's going to be quick in the middle of the field. He's going to be able to, track the ball over his shoulder. He's good at being able to catch low throws. He takes hard hits, so there is that toughness in him at the catch point. He's just not very dynamic as a runner. He's not, he's kind of more that guy that you're going to have to get open off play action on misdirection plays where he's going to get open in space and build momentum to do damage, but he'll make tight coverage plays. He's just, to me, that's and so you can get him in maybe day 2, early day 3, maybe even later than that, and get a good player. He just may not be, he just may not turn into that dynamic weapon. And I feel like that the Bears need a guy that you say, this is our top guy. And if you can't get it at wide receiver this year,
I agree.
Or, Kincaid to me is that guy. Mayer could be that guy. And then you can say, look, we got Jacoby Myers. Maybe we can get him. DJ Chark, let me tell you, DJ Chark has proven that he can be a pretty good receiver. If they can get him, I wouldn't mind that. I'm friends, and a guy who really has taught me a lot in terms of about wide receiver play, just from watching his work and studying it and applying it to the RSP, is a guy by the name of Drew Lieberman, who has a site called the Sideline Hustle, who was a former Rutgers assistant wide receiver coach. And he works with a bunch of pro receivers here in Atlanta. And one of the guys that he works with is Olamide Zacchaeus here in Atlanta. He's out of Virginia. He was a running back slot receiver, late round pick. He's hung around Atlanta. They've tried to get rid of him a number of times, but he's just too good in the vertical game. And they never use him as an open field piece, even though that's what he did so well at Virginia. And they just don't put him on the field. But if the Bears could get a guy like Olamide Zacchaeus, I'm just telling you right now that he could give you what they envisioned from Velus Jones Jr. He can give you what they've envisioned from a number of guys. He can be that slot guy that you can move outside, and he can beat cornerbacks one-on-one, or he can win up the seam, and he can help you in the return game on top of that. And so he would be that
There's a
guy that
sleeper
you
name.
can you just wait late. And it's funny because I've talked to him. To me, he's not necessarily like what Richie James, like last year I was telling the Bears beat pool, they were like, what about the receivers we should draft? I said, well, the best receiver on your roster right now is that free agent you got out of San Francisco. And maybe he wasn't, but he was certainly I said he could be the surprise of your depth chart. And he was. I think Olamide Zacchaeus could be that guy for a team if things go off kilter like it did in New York. But yeah, those are some options at least to consider. And Richie James might be available. I mean, he's a UFA this year, and he's shown some things. I mean, that's another one.
We're jumping into free agency now, so I'm trying to. I want one other question, Shane, on the tight end position, and then jump to wide receiver, because Matt is like, we're at a party with Matt, and he's bringing out all the hors d'oeuvres. It's like
bringing out.
Hey, man, I come from that.
Board,
I come from that family where we feed people. When you come,
shrimp
over.
Cocktail just came out. Now there's empanadas. Here comes. And I'm like, wait a second.
I haven't even opened the fridge yet, man.
I had to cuss my daughter out this past summer, Matt. You remember when you got a hold of me and wanted me to come down to your Cortland, I think, right?
We were at Cornell. My wife's
finishing up.
Yep. Yeah.
And
Elon,
yeah,
that's what I call her. I call her Andy now.
Yeah. Ela and Riley were in Prague, so I was home with my crazy daughter, so I couldn't make the trek down. And I was feeding her later, and I'm like thinking to myself, I didn't say this to her, but I'm thinking to myself, you fucked up my whole weekend with Matt Waldman.
I'll be back up there in August, I think. So we'll
perfect
when she graduates. So we'll figure it out.
We got to get together with you up here.
I know, man. I need to try Moderna or modern or Pepe's.
Can you say pizza?
Pizza. I can say that too.
Yeah. Moderna's a whole different podcast, man.
Yeah.
I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the one enormous. I would say he's the most freakish looking, talented athlete. It's Big O from Georgia. Where is this guy? Is it just Kellen Davis all over again from Michigan State?
Oh, you bring up memories with Kellen Davis. That was a lesson learned.
He's on the ground.
He looked like God made a tight end. It was Kellen Davis. Like, he had everything. Speed, athleticism, but he just
never saw somebody on the ground more than Kellen Davis.
He would fall to catch the ball.
Yes.
Anyway, is that what Big O? There's so much clay here with Big O.
Yeah, I'm
Darnell Washington. I call him Big O because he wears number 0, guys. So
yeah,
Georgia.
He's an impressive athlete. He's certainly physical. He can win the ball in the air. We know all those things. I joke with the kids on Twitter that you obviously don't know who Ben Troop was if all you do is show Darnell Washington hurdling people, and then I go start trolling people and saying, here's all the guys that have hurdled people this year. But yeah, being 6'7" in that 250, 260, 270 range, and you can hurdle somebody, that it is impressive. But what would be more impressive is if he could be a really good inline blocker. And right now he's not. And I don't think he's a very sudden player. So when I look at that, people go, well, he's 6'7". And I'm like, yeah, I remember in fantasy football, when I just was doing fantasy football and not studying players, there was a 6'7" Dallas Cowboy tight end that everybody was interested in. What was it, Novak or no? I don't remember.
Novacek?
No, it was
no, yeah.
LaFleur. That was it.
Yeah.
David LaFleur.
Holy shit! I forgot about that.
And
dude.
people get excited about the same way that they got excited like the Dan McGuire's. Oh, he's a 6'6" quarterback.
Do you remember Alonzo Mays? Mays from Oklahoma State.
Yeah,
yep.
Alonzo Mays.
He missed his first flight when the Bears drafted him, and he was like 6 hours late he missed his first practice, and they said, "What happened?" And he looked at the reporter dead square in the face. He said, "Sometimes it just ain't your day." That's all he said. He walked. That was his introduction to Chicago media.
We need to find a clip of that, because that would be the perfect soundbite for today in the news of cuts, but yeah, it's the size thing is impressive to his height is an impressive thing to fans, and certainly he could be leveraged as a weapon. But I think if you're looking for someone to be a dynamic presence who can not just break tackles, make people miss, short area quickness, that means all the types of blocks you're looking for, really to maximize your two tight end sets for the run and the pass. He ain't it. He's not that guy. But if you're going to say, if you wanted to say, we're going to cut Chase Claypool and we're going to use some of the things that we do with Claypool and Darnell Washington, and we have, he doesn't fit the Bears, in my opinion. He might fit somewhere. He's more of a Gesicki type of player with more height. And maybe you can use him on selected blocking assignments as a lead blocker. But not necessarily as a wineback guy
goes to the Chiefs, right? And plays behind Kelsey, and then he's making these cleanup plays, like a dump off for 6, turns it up for 12, and people get hyped up on. But that's what he is, right? I don't know if he loves the game of football. That's what shows up for me on the tape. And there's so much talent there, but it's a gamble if he wakes up and says, you know what, I'm going to play my ass off. Then that's the risk reward there. That's what everybody's asking me about this kid. And I just come back to that. It's just my honest opinion. I don't know if he loves the game, because he's so, athletic and everything. But it doesn't show up.
Yeah, I don't see the quick twitch like on the level of, say, O.J. Howard, who was like, you could run jet sweeps and he would beat safeties to the edge. But then you'd watch him at the Senior Bowl practices, and this was one of those things that I was talking about a couple weeks ago, where as an analyst, the fantasy football analyst in me in the early days of that wants to go, see, that was the moment I should have just planted my flag and said no. But you don't do that. What you really do is you look at him in practice, and when he's dropping passes and the coaches is just chewing him out, and they don't normally do that in Senior Bowl, okay? When they're chewing you out at the Senior Bowl and going, shaking their head and going, basically saying, you've got so much talent, get your head out of your ass.
He heard it every day at Tuscaloosa, though, the same fucking thing. Yeah. He had so much talent, and it never played out. I mean, Saban was on his ass every day about that.
And that's the thing. If you don't, if you're making those mistakes throughout your career, and you have guys who are literally cattle prodding you to just play to an acceptable level of ball, when your ceiling is there are people who would die for that ceiling, it doesn't mean that they're bad guys. Some people aren't cut out to do what they do. They don't want to do that. I mean, I joke around all the time. I say, my wife had a chance to be a world-class sprinter. When I tell people she ran a 10.78 100 in 1987, and that was, and she smoked a pack of cigarettes a day. She was slew-footed. Yeah, slew-footed. And she's actually short and muscular, so she's not the gazelle. All the gazelles would look at her and laugh at her, and she was a poor starter. And then, the last 40 yards, you could feel the tailwind. And she ran a 10.78. And when she ran that, the coach yelled at her. He was so pissed off with her because he was like, see, this is what you could do if you wanted to do it. Syracuse, Syracuse didn't offer a scholarship. They don't offer scholarships to track athletes because they reserve it for the Olympians, but they wanted her.
Wow.
She had a scholarship offer from FSU, but she wanted to be in business and marketing, and she wanted to go to North Carolina because she grew up in North Carolina, and she wanted to be a Tar Heel. And even then, her cousin, Phil Ford, her second cousin, Ford, who is related to that Ford along the line of the Cincinnati Bengals. That Ford. He knocked on her door and was pissed off with her because he's like, why aren't you on the track team? She's like, because I want to be a student. I don't want to be a student athlete, But that's the thing. Just because you have the talent doesn't mean that you want to use it. But the problem is if you're there and don't want to be, you're taking up space for somebody else who might want that opportunity. And that's when you get a little pissed off.
You could just say that you were sitting on the couch. She didn't want to leave you, right? That's why she didn't want to go. She had that.
She didn't know me. She didn't know me. She
from Rocky Mount?
Nope. She's from a small town called Mocksville. If you know where Mocksville, North Carolina, it's just outside Winston-Salem. So that's where she.
Ryan Cox probably knows.
Well, that's what
Mocksville. Yeah.
I have no idea. I did want to move to North Carolina.
Great state.
But the wife kind of
hey,
they do that sometimes.
Moving to listen, if you grew up in the north and you move to the south, it's a scary thing for a lot of people. I had that experience as a young kid, so I thought I was moving to a foreign country that wasn't like a pleasant place. I thought I was moving to like someplace crazy. To move from Cleveland, Ohio to Atlanta, Georgia in 1980, man, listen, that was a wild scene for me. But I call myself a Southerner now. I actually love Atlanta, and I like a lot of Georgia. So it's cool.
All right, well let's switch this over real quick to some wide receivers, Matt.
Yes.
I mean, I think a lot of Bears fans early on defaulted to. I mean, I can read some early mock drafts that had the Bears at number 4, and they're like, oh, Quentin Johnson. I'm not a Johnson fan, and when you said that I don't, any round 1 wide receiver, I'm 100% in that vein with you. But talk about this class overall, and I do have a couple of names once you get going that I want to talk to you about.
So do I.
Well, we'll just say this. Overall, there are some players who I think can be good starters in this league. But I think all of these guys have questions, or they just may not fit what your need is based on the fact that wide receiver is really 4 to 5 different positions. Are you really, maybe Josh Downs is one of the more talented guys. Maybe Jordan Addison is one of the more talented guys. But do you really need a Jordan Addison type if you've got a Darnell Mooney? Do you, maybe you could say you do. But again, that means that you're thinking Jordan Addison is the next coming of Marvin Harrison or a Devonta Smith. And even Devonta Smith needed A.J. Brown, if you ask me.
Yep,
he needed,
totally agree.
So there are some guys here, but the guys that are going to go in the first round, like Jackson Smith and Jigba, do you need him? To me, he's a slot receiver again. Like maybe you could play him a little bit outside, but I think you guys overall need, if you're going to keep Claypool, you're going to give Mooney another go at it. You need a guy who can play probably flanker and slot, or split end and slot, or at least split in and flanker probably. Like they can either play the 2 outside positions or that flanker slot hybrid who's like an awesome route runner who can win against maybe a secondary corner deep, and maybe hold his own with the top corner deep if he really starts to develop. But what you're trying to do is draw attention away from guys like Claypool or your top tight end, and go from there. And those are guys that I think you can get a little bit later than round 1 or even round 2.
So one of the guys that I know some people aren't high on him, but one of the guys that I like talk about is Xavier Hutchinson.
See, I'm so glad you mentioned him.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you mentioned. I love Xavier Hutchinson.
Me
too.
I'm big fan, Matt. Who was talking about him? The former Rick Spielman was talking about him, and I mean, I love the kid. If the Bears came away in round 2, even with him,
Cyclones.
Yeah, at some point. But just talk about him a little bit and tell me what you love about him.
Well, two things. First of all, I'm not kidding when I tell you that before the show came up, I pulled up my profile on Xavier Hutchinson just to look at notes because I knew I was going to be talking about him, and it wasn't anything that we talked about beforehand.
No, not
and
at
then
all.
what I am half kidding about is this: it's true that I've been told that Rick Spielman has had copies of the RSP when he was a GM at the Vikings.
Yep.
But what I'm going to joke about is that Rick Spielman obviously knows what kind of wide receivers I like.
Well, that's one. Yeah, you better listen. Yeah.
but the thing about Hutchinson is he can play either side of the formation. He can be serviceable as a split end and be a good flanker.
Route runner. Yeah.
You know, I think he is someone that has a nice understanding of how to create releases and generate releases, and he's only going to get better at it. What you want from wide receivers is really to have that dichotomy between patience and suddenness with their footwork and their arm movements. You want them to be violent at the right time, but you want them to be kind of like a running back, slow to the hole, fast through it. You want them to be slow to set up the defender and change the kind of have suddenness and off-speed pitches combined into what you're doing with your footwork and your hand counters. Hutchinson already understands how to do that. So that's a good thing. It just means he has to build the vocabulary, understand what tendencies are for players and what the best releases are to use for certain types of routes and coverages. He's someone that can really tell a story on short routes. And when you can it's all good that Quentin Johnston can, tell some stories on a vertical route spanning 50 yards. Good for you. That's important, but it's not nearly as impressive to be able to tell a story that moves a defender in a very efficiently on a short route, like a slant, or a quick in cut or a quick out cut.
Yeah.
When you can do that efficiently, and you have that kind of ability, that's great. He has a very believable double move. I think he has violent breaks that can be very good for like curl routes. He has different types of breaks that work well, like 3-step breaks, pop and drop steps, the long break step that you're looking for. All those things are good. He's good at the boundary. He's very good away from in terms of his catch radius and working away from his frame.
And he's got the size.
He's got the size.
Yeah, he's 6'2".
And here's the best thing about him that, to me, is Phil mentioned this, talking about how you want quick transitions out of after the catch. You want to be able to get downhill immediately. This guy does that extremely well.
Yep.
And very few receivers who everyone ooh and ah about do that well. Because they see all the fancy moves in the open field. You want the guy who's quick downhill, and then when he's in space, he can set people up with moves. He knows how to do that. I'm a big Xavier Hutchinson fan, and he's one of my top 5 receivers right now on my board. That may change, but he certainly is a guy that I would love to see the Bears get.
Yep, he fits for me.
I have 4 guys that I want the Bears to get.
Well,
Xavier's one of them.
Start with the guy that you and I did not, because Matt and I just agreed on a guy without talking first. But bring up
you did it again with me because
bring up the name because I had the benefit of being
able
to be.
We'll start with the guy that Shane and I
was on the sideline for a Syracuse game with my son and watched this kid play, and I was extremely impressed. But go ahead, Phil.
Charlie Jones out of Purdue is a guy that I want dogs. I want guys that are going to understand the moment and want the ball. The later round guy, I don't know where people are going to rank him because of the bias and the body type. But 6 foot, what is he? Probably 180.
Right.
But the guy makes every fucking play. Oh, in the big moment. Charlie Jones has the thing outside the tape. It's one of those uncoachable things. It's going to be, it remind, what's his name? The salsa dancer from the Giants. Victor Cruz had that same thing. No matter what, I'm getting this fucking football. Peerless Price had that kind of effort in the moment. This kid, to me, I just want him on the Bears. I want a winner. And he's the guy. I'm watching the fucking Michigan. Michigan's triple covering him, and he's making the play on third down. Again, I can't speak highly enough about him, but I don't care where he goes or where he's ranked. That's a guy I wanted to hear your thoughts on as I wax poetic about him.
Certainly, I think he's certainly, for me, he has a grade of a guy who has a good chance to make a roster, without a doubt. What I'm waiting for, again, is just the metrics at the combine to confirm things that it's hard to see always on tape without, pairing the things together. And sometimes you can see very clearly, like a guy like Kyron Williams, I could watch him and go, yeah, that 90-yard run was a fraud. He's not fast. But there are sometimes you look at things and go, I'm just not sure how good his acceleration is or isn't. And it's more from a neutral standpoint. I just look at stuff like and go, I don't know. It could be really good. It might not be really good. I'm going to wait and see. And then I'm going to go back and watch the tape and see if I see evidence of that. But what I can say is there's a lot of polish to his game as a route runner, that without a doubt. There's small details you'd like to see him get a little bit better at. When you break on speed breaks, you have what's really called your break step, which is usually that long step, that long plant. You have a drive step, which is that second step or the first step in the turn. And you really want that to be angled at a 90-degree angle, or even better, a 45-degree angle back to the quarterback. And then you want the line step, which is also supposed to be flat. If you do those 3 steps well, you're going to have a flat break. And sometimes he doesn't quite have that, that drive step isn't quite sharp enough on certain routes. So he drifts a little bit, and it doesn't matter against the slower athletes in zone who might not catch him, but there's a difference facing a linebacker in the Big Ten and an elite NFL linebacker, cornerback with more recovery speed. So that's something he can work on. I don't think it's a major issue, because I also saw him show a sharp drive step and line step against tight man-to-man coverage against Wisconsin. So he can do it. He just got to get a little more consistent. I think as a receiver, he's fearless, absolutely fearless, and that's the dog in him that you mentioned really well. He can wait till the latest window to catch a target that's moving past his frame, which means that he can adjust to coverage in the way Chris Olave did. That's one of the things I loved about Olave, is that he can attack at the earliest window, or he could wait for the last window based on whether it's optimal for him try and catch the ball to avoid contact, and he could determine which window to do that. When he has to fully extend for the ball, that can be a little bit harder for him. But again, we're talking about throws where it's the difference between being a superstar and being a good, contributor on an NFL team. And I think that he does that well. It's harder for him sometimes to work behind the break point on certain plays. So if he can show the athletic ability to make some of the tougher plays that make you a reliable starter, the rest of his skills are there for you to say, all right, that could happen.
I'm looking for dogs. That's the Bears don't have them. Darnell is showing and proving me again. First time he's been hurt, I doubted the kid because of his slight, slender build, but he has proven me wrong, and he has a dog in him. I don't see Equinemius St. Brown. I don't see Valus with the dog. that's what I'm looking at when I'm scouting these receivers, what the Bears are missing. So my number one receiver in this whole draft, I want you to talk about him. I don't know, because I don't put this kid in a box, and it's Zay Flowers out of BC. Your thoughts on him? I just see there's so much talent and so much dog on Flowers. What are your thoughts with him?
I mean, I certainly think that he is someone that can give you some skills at the line of scrimmage to get off of that. You want to see a little more of it because you see him more on the inside at Boston College.
Yeah, he played a lot of slot.
Yeah. So, occasionally they'll let him be the single receiver on the backside of the formation. So you got to see at least selected looks where he could win against press coverage. So the skills are there for him to build on. I'll put it that way. I think he has enough speed. I mean, he can reverse the field.
Yeah, he's twitchy.
Yeah, he is definitely twitchy.
He's like, wow.
Now I don't know whether he has better long speed than short area quickness or it's the other way around, but I'm looking forward to seeing again the combine to kind of
that's checking a box.
Yeah. But he's he understands how to set up defenders in zone. He really is a good zone route runner, and he can set up multiple levels of zone with his routes. He's flexible. He drops his weight easily. So that the physical skills are there for him to become a good one-on-one route runner, where he can be a dynamic guy with breaks and get those extra moves, or develop really dynamic moves that'll allow him to make sharp turns. I would say he can leave his feet unnecessarily sometimes on some throws that come at him fast. So I wonder about his tracking maybe at the highest level, but I don't think it's something that's going to kill his career. I'll just put it that way. It's just, we're just talking about the difference between when, one of the listeners said Antonio Brown. It's like the difference between Zay Flowers and maybe Antonio Brown. It may feel like a canyon at this point, but but if he can do some of those things, that gets him a little closer. But he uses his hands well to catch the ball. He's not one of those guys that, that he can improve it. I do think he does clap attack sometimes. So you want to work on that, on the clap attack, but he understands how to undercut defenders to get position. He understands how to, embrace the fall so that he doesn't land on the football, so he can make some dynamic plays in contested scenarios. Obviously he's elusive. So yeah, there's some nice things with Zay Flowers, and that's the thing for me. I watched the Clemson, Louisville, Virginia Tech, and Rutgers games with him thus far. And one of the guys that he reminded me of, and I think if, this was during a period of football where I think this guy would have had a better career in this style of NFL, was Cowboys wide receiver out of University of Miami, Kevin Williams. Do you remember Kevin?
I remember
Williams?
Kevin. Yeah.
Like there was
Kevin Williams.
Yeah, there was a little bit of Kevin Williams that for some reason he reminded me of that. But again, he's a guy that I have a little bit more to watch. But
I love the kid. I do see a little Antonio Brown. That was kind of he just twitchy and tracking and tough. But he played a lot of slot receiver, and I think he could play both inside and outside based on what I saw of him on tape.
Nice.
But he's an interesting cat. I know we're running.
We can go a little
time.
longer. We
Okay.
can go a little longer.
The guy that I think that people got, I know Shane and I talked about this guy too, is Cedric Tillman. I just am a huge fan of the kid. I believe his injury kind of pushed him to the side where his teammate, became the big Hyatt became the big big play, deep ball thrower, where Tillman, I feel like there's some lightning in the bottle here with this football player. Tough, physical football player. You know, the year before he was dominant coming in, All-American, everything hyped up about him, and then he had that injury set him back, and I felt like he played a quiet role. Where do you see him in this draft?
I just watched another 4 games of him today, actually,
Look at
after
that.
watching 4 games of him earlier in the
Gotta
year.
get this motherfucker on staff, it sounds like, Phil.
Come over and work with us.
Hey, see, there you go. But he's fascinating because when you watch him, when it's his turn to get the ball, when he knows he's going to get the ball, you can see the speed, you can see the quick twitch for the size, you can see the play strength. He definitely has the play strength that you want. He doesn't look like he's moving as fast as he actually is, which is always a fun thing to see. When it's not his time to get the ball, it's not that he's lazy. I was just making this point today on Twitter, and it was really in regard to Cedric Tillman. But I didn't mention him by name, but it was pretty obvious that's who I was probably talking about, because I was talking about Tillman earlier in the day. But it was that when guys aren't playing with a level of urgency, it's not always about that they're lackadaisical. It can be that they don't see the bigger picture, that they're just not mature about the bigger picture of like why it's important to execute some of the details that they're not executing all the time. And I see that with him, like when he's not
great,
when he doesn't get the ball. But he's the big thing with him is that you see the big play targets where he wins the ball, a la like what Claypool occasionally does. And I think he's someone that he can attack the ball at the earliest point. He has some hops that you would like him to kind of fix, where maybe it's a tracking thing. But he does make some late turns on back shoulders that are really good. I've seen some fantastic catches where he can pull the ball out of a defender's hands from awkward positions.
Right.
Like he makes the uber athletic plays. But you also want to see him, again, leap a little earlier so he doesn't have to make those plays. Like track it a little earlier so that he can be more efficient. Like Jamar Chase, the best thing about him, or Stephon Diggs, is that when they're in a contested situation, you see them jump straight up and down. And that's because when you track the ball early enough to time your jump, you're going to wind up straight up and down. If you're tracking the ball late and you're reacting late, you're going to be laying out backwards. And that's when you see those those Pickens catches and Colin Johnson with the Giants from out of Texas, who always looked like he was floating on air. But the problem is you open up your body to the defender when you do that. So there's a little bit of that with Tillman. It's a little up and down with him. And I'm at the point with him that I'm actually was really frustrated with trying to grade him in a certain area this week or today, because when it comes to his catching, I had him at a point where he's not quite starter level for me. He's a committee level pass catch, which means he can contribute, but I've got him on a level where he could get over that edge. He just got to do the little things consistently enough so that he's not a boom bust Gabriel Davis type of player. So that's kind of where I feel about him, is that you're right. There's lightning in the bottle with him.
Yeah.
He could probably be a huge big play guy, but it's the consistent stuff that concerns me.
Little things like being engaged when you know you're not getting the ball. Kind of important.
That's important.
Right. Yeah. So Matt, one of the this guy has been all over the map with some people. And again, this is a guy that I got to watch live, but I just feel like that there's something there, but he's got the big play ability and super explosive. But then I also saw him wide open by 30 yards and drop the football in the Carrier Dome in Syracuse. But Dontavian Wicks, talk about him a little bit, from Virginia. I mean, there's a lot of warts there, but there's some special attributes. I mean, it's not a guy that's going to come in here and take over and be wide receiver 1 or 2 or 3. It's going to take him some time, but talk on him a little bit from the Virginia wide receiver.
I think when he plays to the speed that he's capable of, and he's quick in and out of breaks, I think he has to develop consistent technical proficiency with details and make effort on every route. And if he does with routes as well as what he does with his hand position as a pass catcher, I think he could be a routine contributor on a depth chart, maybe even a productive contributor as like your 3 guy, something like that. I do laugh because Drew Lieberman is working with Dontavian Wicks, and he said, "Hey man, do you got anything on Wicks?" And I sent it to him, and I haven't heard from him since. He might be busy, but he might not have liked what I said. But but no, seriously, like Wicks certainly has that promise. I just think that he has work to do.
Yeah, totally agree. You see those guys, and he can be so explosive, but then I'm like, how are you dropping that football? And he was an interesting name that I wanted to bring up. And the other guy, Phil, I just want to butt in here too, is talk about Stanford wide receiver Wilson is a guy that I'm very, very intrigued by.
Love this guy.
That
was my last guy.
I'm glad you like this guy. I watched him again yesterday. Back in November, I watched him, and he was at the top of my board at that point.
At the top of it.
At the top of it.
Wow.
He was the best route runner in this class.
I agree.
At the top of it. He has that patience and suddenness. He can make all the breaks you want him to make. He understands how to really set up pacing. He's gotten a lot better after the catch in terms of with his movement from last year to this year. He can set up defenders 1 to 2 steps ahead from a route running standpoint against off coverage, and then bait them after the catch to transition effectively. He is to me, he reminds, when I think of the receiver that the Bears are looking for to tie the room together right now with what they've got, so that if 2-3 years from now, Claypool's no longer there, Darnell Mooney's no longer there, but somebody else really is, then you can move the guy you've drafted in this class to 1 or 2 positions and still get a great deal out of him. Michael Wilson could be that guy. He reminds, when I think of like players that he reminds me of, Juju Smith-Schuster is a name that comes up. Michael Crabtree, in terms of that patience and suddenness, comes up. Michael Thomas, if like everything worked out unbelievably well and he continues to accelerate his game. Now, the big difference between those 3 guys and Michael Wilson right now is that Michael Wilson still has lapses as a pass catcher. He's going to drop passes. He clap attacks some balls. He did it less this year than he did last year. But there are times that he drops passes that you'd really like to see him catch, like easy catchable balls. But if he can, there's good players that drop passes. So if it's not a killer to his game, everything else is there from the standpoint of the route running, the willingness to block, the skill after the catch. He is an engineering student who was a 4-star prospect coming out, which usually doesn't mean anything. But if you're impressive now and you were a 4 or 5-star prospect, what that tells you is that you weren't just a 4 or 5-star prospect because you were in a man's body playing a kid's game in high school. There was skill to you, and he has that.
He also was a captain.
He was also a captain.
And special teams value too.
Special teams value. He is very good on punt returns. He tracks the ball really well. He can get downfield and find it. Yes,
he's a Dante Pettis replacement. But this is
anybody can.
But no, I mean, that's literally the only reason that he was on this roster. And this is what I think when Bears fans are talking about wide receivers, it's automatically, he's not a wide receiver 1, so he sucks. the Bears have to improve from wide receiver 5 all the way up.
Yeah.
With these guys. And that's why I said you come away with a Hutchinson and Wilson in this draft, both of those guys, I'm happy as hell.
Yeah. And Wilson is the big thing with Wilson is he had a foot injury that he suffered last December, and it took him 11 months to recover from it. They have it listed as an undisclosed injury, but it was a foot. And then he missed time after like a 3 or 4 game stretch this year. Yeah. So he's
that why you comped him to Michael Thomas?
Right. You know, it was before I knew he missed time that I comped him to that, but it was just, right. So, but that's the thing. And Russ Landy did a good job on our podcast talking about him, saying that, teams, if he gets drafted in like, say, the 3rd round, that means teams had a first day grade on him.
Yep.
And if he gets drafted really, to me, early 3rd day or late 2nd day, it still means that you're getting a pretty valuable guy.
Bears have that first pick in the 4th round. That's what
I got a guy who kind of caught my eye I'd love to mention real quick. That's
absolutely do it.
Okay. Puka Nacua out of BYU. Okay. 6'2", 205.
Puka.
Maybe there's a little early Doucette in him. And maybe that's not great with the
hands. I call Claudio's mother on the beach, Puka.
but listen, he tracks the ball.
I fucked your mom.
That's right. There you go. There's some tracking things that cause some hand position problems that I think he can fix. But he's physical enough. I think he's someone that has dog in him. He has really good stop-start quickness. He's someone that really can run after the catch. And he's also a pretty good blocker in terms of that. A lot of wide receivers won't close the gap and really get tight, and that for they can't sustain their efforts. Nacua is good at that. I think he's very good at that. He'll square up safeties or linebackers and hold his own a little bit. And he may not do that in the NFL against linebackers, but the fact you're willing to do it in college is a good thing. He had a foot injury.
Didn't he play at Washington too before?
Yep. Foot injury at Washington in 2019, and he broke the foot and had missed 4 to 5 weeks.
Went to BYU, so he's already 36 years old. That's probably one of the downsides, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's probably true. But
how old is he?
I don't know how old he is. We're gonna have to take a look. And then one guy that I know no one's talking about, and I got to go back and look at him. But when I was watching Trey Lance a few years ago, there's a kid who just kept popping off, making plays. And I'm like, who the hell is this guy? And I did some scouting report stuff on him. He was a flanker, and he was used in the slot, plays in a West Coast system. He sets up routes pretty good in 2-way go scenarios, has good weight drop. He's really good at tracking the ball. He's graceful. Jump backs are good. High points well. Transitions downhill. Good feel for the direction he should turn upfield. I think he understands pretty well how to run. You got to be a little rugged to play, North Dakota State, even though they play indoors. They still, play out in those environs a fair bit. He's 6 feet, probably 193, and his name's Phoenix Sproles.
Phoenix
Sproles. He's someone that
gotta be like the best name in the fucking draft, honestly.
There you go. Yep, I like it.
Sorry, just feeling it. Phoenix Sproles.
I feel like Chris could be like, if you could put a wig on him, he could give you a little John Belushi in Animal House. Like
he's the absolute best.
He's awesome, man.
You should see him do Tony Soprano.
Oh my God. Great. Believe it or not, this is an off topic, but Phil and I are in a book club with Chris.
Yes.
Yes. We met last night.
Our first book club meeting.
Yep. Yeah. The first book we did was The Godfather.
Oh,
The Godfather.
The Godfather.
All right.
So I'm
that'll
sitting
work.
here on StreamYard, and then Zora shows up, and he's like, "What'd you bring to eat?" And I'm like, "I got a bottle of grape water." This motherfucker brings up a full-blown charcuterie board.
He's
fucking
got
mounded.
soppressata.
I mean, it's
He's got
he sent
prosciutto.
it down. Oh my god, this is the coolest thing I ever saw in my life.
Straight out of he had grapes from the mafia.
He
See,
did. It was
From
See,
Sicily.
Mrs. RSP would be all down for that because, like, she used to have Godfather weekends where she'd watch all the Godfathers in a row. That's like one of her absolute favorite movies is the
You
Godfather
would've
trilogy.
You can. We were halfway through the book club last night. We were like, Jesus, we really should have recorded this. I mean, it would have been epic.
I bet. No doubt. Man, that's hilarious. And I just think I'm trying to think of something you guys mentioned. I was listening to Courtney Cronin talk on the lead up about the hiring of the president, and all I could think about is because one of the other things my wife watches like from reel to reel on end like 100 million times is Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
And I think of like that scene where Bronn of the Blackwater talks to the two Lannister boys and says, basically says, "Look, you idiots." He didn't say that, but like, you idiots. He goes, you idiots are sons of the killers who actually like were the leaders. And once the leaders have these kids, the kids fuck it all up. You know, so I was thinking, you got
Michael.
George Hallis was a killer, and then all the kids after that were like basically the Lannisters and the Baratheons and all those people. So you need a new killer to come in. It sounds like you guys got one.
I think we got one there. That's the exciting thing. In fact, we were talking about that in the book club, how different this is. Because Chris, I won't give away any trade secrets, Chris. I know he's probably watching. But Chris, lived it, and he understands this football team needs to course correct what Waldman is talking about. The pussification of the Chicago Bears needs to get rolling down the hill in a different direction, and a whole new identity where football is first and foremost the most important. And you're starting to get dogs out there, and you're starting to say, listen, we're not going to wait another year with Matt Nagy when we know it ain't right. Let's move on and do the right thing at the right time.
They did that with their last two coaches.
Exactly.
You invest in a high round quarterback.
They collaborated.
Keep a head coach for 1 year and then launch him.
They regressed, and then they collaborated. And you know what? When you regress and you're out there in center stage saying, you know what, we regressed. Well, you should pack your shit and get the fuck out, because that ain't how the NFL is in year 3.
You can't come to a postseason presser when your fans are, feeling awful, and then you are asked about the positive of the season. It's, we really like the way that the coaching staff and front office reacted coming out of a 6-game losing streak.
We went and did Club Dub.
We won one more game and then went on a 4-game losing streak immediately after that.
The 27-year-old version of Kevin Warren when he was negotiating. And
No, Ted, we don't need to see you anymore. He's like an evil. Oh, thank God.
Yeah, we've got a little Bernie Madoff going on right there.
Yeah, exactly.
He's like, what do we call him from The Simpsons? What do we call him?
Millhouse.
Millhouse from The Simpsons. Yeah.
If Millhouse.
Yeah, exactly.
That's him. There he is.
I fucked your mom.
I know, Claudio. Calm down. Listen, we've said it all. We've done a lot of draft talk tonight with Matt Waldman. I
do have to ask him one real quick one, though. What did you think of Miami's starting quarterback in the playoffs this year, Matt? I know you were – that was your boy. I was thinking about you.
I thought he played well, and I thought Tony Romo was nuts on one of those calls when he said, he should have seen that. And I was looking at it, and I was going –
I know exactly.
Right? I think
what is he, Superman?
I thought maybe Tony got something in his eye at that point. But
I was thinking about you though when he got in. That he was starting, because I remember you were on our airwaves talking about him.
Yeah, I think. Listen, I thought he had a great season for what you would expect from a player who was undrafted and was their third string guy. The fact that he even made that roster as a third stringer tells you that they were very impressed with him.
Sure.
And I don't want to see Tua Tagovailoa have to leave his career, because if he does, that means that he has some severe head trauma, because that's what's like the road he's going to likely go down if that happens. But at the same time, I'm hopeful for the fact that Skylar Thompson will get a chance to be the number 2 this year, and maybe they'll be open to that idea to let him be the number 2 and move on from Bridgewater. And based on how he looked, I mean, I thought he did more and his teammates did a lot less. And part of that might have been that they weren't used to. One is they probably weren't used to working with him, and he didn't have a lot of reps, and some of that's on him and his growth and development he needed. And the second thing is that he was a right-hander. They'd been playing with a left-hander for all this time. So there were a lot of drops that shouldn't have happened in the Vikings game earlier in the year, and then the later games this year. And his offensive line was pretty much non-existent, and he played tough. He made some big throws. I mean, he looks like the player to me that, if I were a team that didn't have if I were a team that didn't get the quarterback I wanted, I would be calling Miami and going, how much do you want for that 7th round kid you got? I'll give you a 4th rounder for him. See, could I get a 4th rounder for him? And if they were willing to take that for him, I would do that and let him compete.
Listen, every time Shakir caught a pass, I thought of you as well. You're a staple here at TTNL. You're part of the family. I know I waxed poetic early in the show, had you right out the gate. There's a lot of stuff going on with, my family and stuff going on. And Matt coming on here as a friend and just pre-show, just being there for me and everything. So we had to condense the show tonight for you fans. And Matt, we went extra time talking. And that's how we do. In fact, I therapeutically would just love to keep going.
But I got real quick, let him speak on the RSP real quick, because that's always important this time of year.
Yeah, I really appreciate that.
And we got to have you back. Can we get you on the calendar before the draft? I want to,
without a doubt.
Obviously, you're going to come on the patron side. We're going to break down some tape. Me, you, Shane, my dad.
Yeah.
And but go ahead, Matt. Talk about probably one of the greatest in-depth reads that any fan should purchase and buy.
I marvel at it every single year.
Well, I appreciate it. It's the best thing it's the best effort that I make to do with anything that I do in this space. And I believe it's the best thing that I do in this space. The rookie scouting portfolio, if you're not familiar with it, it's a draft guide devoted to the skill positions: quarterback, running back, and wide receiver. I've been doing it since 2006. I started as an operations and quality manager in my career and was doing that and got a lot of training on how to develop best practices for evaluating talent and putting systems together to reduce variation from things that are seemingly subjective observational tools. And I realized that I could do this to study football, because the methods that I learned were to build on themselves, to continue to get better and better and learn how to refine what it is that you're looking for and how to define it. And if you want, you can click on, scroll up, and where it says 2023 RSP pre-draft, post-draft on the right-hand side. Yeah, if you click that, that'll take you to, where you can pre-order it. And there's lots of things that people are saying about it, what I say that's in it. There'll even be some videos that can show you about, what's in it. But you get reports with our very in-depth rankings, about.
There's your boy right there. I remember you talking about him last week.
Yeah, Isaiah Pacheco. Yeah, exactly. But you can, basically I take you through my entire process, and it's something that's gotten better over 18 years of time. And you get rankings, you get in-depth profiles. I take you through how I stack rank players at each type of criteria that I study with. Everything's transparent. So you see how I grade, why I grade the players the way I grade them, how they compare up, and then I add a fantasy angle to it as well. But I'll just put it to you this way. If you're not a fantasy guy, that's okay. Even though I've been doing fantasy writing since 2003 and I'm a senior staff writer at Football Guys, and obviously I aim a lot of this towards fantasy, especially the post-draft where you get cheat sheets. And when I rank Nick Chubb or Patrick Mahomes or Chris Olave or A.J. Brown or Justin Jefferson higher than most people did after the draft and said they're going to fit well, I don't tell you to get them first round. I'll tell you where you can get them at value. But the thing that real football, I'll put it to you this way. When I've had a guy at LSU's who managed LSU's team in their operations sector tell me that he got a job and he learned most of his football from watching YouTube videos that I did on my channel, and wrote me and said he's at the combine and he thought he owed me a thank you because there were two scouts who were saying, if I ever meet Matt Waldman, I'm giving him a hug. And I said, what team was that? They said they were Chief Scouts, and that was the year that Patrick Mahomes,
maybe Ryan Poles might have been.
I don't know, but when you're in a line at Starbucks and two former players are standing in front and they're trying to get a job with John Elway, the player you hate growing up, at least as a fan, and they recognize you and start geeking out over you. And they literally turn their backs on John Elway while he's talking to you. And I can tell my father, a Denver Broncos fan, that John Elway just got dissed because they were geeking out over the work that I do, and they're former NFL players, or that Alex Brown, the head of the director of recruiting at SMU, says that the RSP is one of the two most purchased draft guides, independent draft guides out there by scouts and personnel people who he visits with every week as a part of his job. So he sees what they use as cross-checking work. That's what I'm proud of, because it means that people who understand football value that I understand football. And I'm even getting to contribute a little bit to some trainers. There's a certain Mr. Irrelevant who did pretty well this year, who I got to contribute my scouting report for them to do for his trainer, Will Hewitt, to be able to work with him. And he asked me to contribute some of that. And he's working with Anthony Richardson this year and Tyson Bagent. But I said, I asked for feedback about that. And he said, listen, I reviewed some stuff with him. I look at your reports, and then we'd look at film together and say, what do you think about, what were you thinking when you were, during this time? And he told me, he goes, when I was listening to him giving a response and I had seen some of the plays you were looking at, he nearly said almost word for word some of the things that you said he was thinking. He said, so it was impressive. He said, from that standpoint. So I'm proud of that stuff because, I'm not going to get everybody right. I don't know their character. I don't study I don't study, I don't have an investigative team. I'm not doing industrial psychology and having team visits. I don't have a staff.
Exactly.
I just watch film, but I can tell
Tape
you
never lies.
I can tell you on film what that guy can do, at least when he, in terms of his effort between the lines. And again, 18 years, you can get it for $21.95 at mattwaldman.com. You get a pre-draft, you get a post-draft, you get a newsletter that comes out June through December. And I donate up to $5,000 each year now to an organization called Darkness to Light. They're an organization devoted to preventing sexual abuse of children through training programs for adults to help them recognize when there's grooming behaviors happening, either in civic organizations, government, schools. They've worked with Penn State after the Sandusky scandal. They've worked with Michigan State. They work on all sorts of programs. And most importantly, they also teach adults how to handle the situation when a child does report it, because that can be the time where the damage is compounded most. Sometimes, as horrible as the act can be as a trauma, the trauma can be even worse when adults don't handle it right, because then the kid doesn't either feel believed, doesn't feel cared for, and then they feel like they deserved what happened to them. And then that creates a lot of the outgrowth of things that happen. And the RSP's given over $55,000 since 2012 to this organization. So we're shooting for $60,000 this year.
That is awesome.
Well said, man. You're a class act, a true friend, an ambassador of our network. And I just love, talking with you and breaking down film with you is going to be the dream come true. I can't wait to do that on the Patreon side.
Oh, it's going to be great. And I love being on the show with you guys. And I love the audience that you guys have. You guys have an awesome audience. It's just got a great vibe. And from day one, from the first time, I mean, we talked after the show, and I think I said on the show, I said, I feel like this is home. Like this is like,
you did,
this is like my kind of crew of people. And so
Jack
you don't
will
find
never
that
clip
often.
that highlight, though. He don't do shit. He didn't fucking show up tonight. We needed Ivan.
but it's cool, man. It's like, it makes me laugh because it's like, if I weren't such a glutton for punishment, man, I'd probably stop being a Browns fan and head over to Chicago.
There you go.
It's like I can't seem to let that go. But when I think of teams, just from the standpoint of like how you guys are and how this group is, it's like there's an appeal to be a Bears fan, and I've always been an AFC guy, so it's like it's kind of funny that's a testament to what you guys do.
You're the best, man. Thank you so much for your time. And honestly, you're a crowd favorite, but you're a favorite of Shane and myself. Fuck what guys. Claudio has to say. He's always
I fucked your mom.
Knock it off, Claudio. Jesus.
I think that's what my dog's going to say to him.
The great Matt Waldman. Follow him on Instagram. I just follow him for the goddamn music that he's playing, but obviously there's more. I love the guy and the person even more than the amazing scout and reference he becomes. He's just an ambassador of the program, and I thank you for your time tonight, Mr. Waldman. You're the best.
Man, I appreciate it, fellas. It's my pleasure, and I'm going to go end my night by watching some Parker Washington. I got to get my 3 in a day.
There you go.
There you go. In college, I used to do getting 3 in a day. Sorry, Cherie. I was just joking.
Cherie was even shaking her head at you there.
I know. I saw her. Anyway, the great Matt Waldman, TTNL. We are just kicking off the off season, and look at these guests and getting you ready for the NFL draft. I apologize to you fans. I wanted to give you a little bit of time to have Matt answer some of your questions, but I promise, and you already heard it from the horse's mouth, and I'm not talking about John Elway, I'm talking about Matt Waldman. He'll be back before the draft. Thank you so much, Matt. God bless you. Have a great night. Great stuff.
Thank you, fellas.
Thanks, Matt.
Later, Matt.
The great Matt Waldman. Guys, I got to bounce. I'm going to let Shane handle shout outs. And to all you fans, I just want to say this real quick. Thank you so much for your thoughts and prayers. They mean a lot towards my mom and my dad, my whole family could use them right now. I gotta go deal with some family stuff. That's why we're gonna cut it short tonight. But I always try to be transparent to the best that I can. I love you guys. Shane, thank you for tonight. Matt, I will shout out Matt. Just a tremendous human being. Claudio, you're the man. Ivan, Cherie, God bless you guys. I'll see you next week. We will have Shane's nemesis facing off.
No, definitely not my nemesis. He's been very, very kind to me. I just don't agree with some of his football takes.
Shane's football take nemesis. Yeah. Retract that. We'll see you next week.
He's coming around a little bit.
Yes.
I know y'all ready to go, but just real quick, Super Bowl is Sunday. Any predictions?
I've got the Eagles by.
Fuck out of here.
Shout out Take Never Lies. Shout out. I know you hear me, baby. Shout out. I know you see me, baby. Shout out. We gotta holler at you. Keep it 100 crew. Gotta show love too. Shout out. I know you hear me, baby. Shout out. I know you see me, baby. Shout out. We gotta holler at you. Keep it 100 crew. Gotta show love too. From the fans in the stands to the follows on the gram. Thanks for your support, showing love in the DM. We stay Spencer strong, fight together till the end. Now it's time to shout out worldwide friends and fam. Like
the network that keeps it real, 100 crew. So many in the world that I gotta show love to. For some this policy, the show is at its end. But for me it's so important to thank the charter members and the fans. Built the network, speak the truth through the tape. Never run around the truth, no narratives we create. Set them straight, no bubble screen on 4th and 8. Claudio Jane getting nervous cause keeping them up too late. That's it, no more to say they get the shot of vital. But hurry up cause the postman's getting homicidal.
Shout out. I know you hear me, baby. Shout out. I know you see me, baby. Shout out. We gotta holler at you. Keep it 100 crew. Gotta show love too. Shout out. I know you hear me, baby. Shout out. I know you see me, baby. Shout out. We gotta holler at you. Keep it 100 crew. Gotta show love too.
The network that keeps it real. Spencer strong.
Look at that. We got out of there without that horrible ending, right, Claude?
I still heard it at the end, but it's all right.
Yeah, I know I do too. I'm like, oh shit, I got to get that out of the way for Claude. But yeah, it's Phil's handling business like he's got to do. We always preach the same thing here. It's always going to be family first. And like I said, positive thoughts obviously work. We've all needed them. We've all gotten them from all of you listeners and everybody involved here. So we send them to Phil and his family and you know, his mom and dad and everybody. So just seeming we're in this never-ending spiral of, I don't want to say negativity, but bad news, and you know, such is life. But a show like tonight, coming on and talking to Matt and hanging out with you guys, you know, even sometimes you're tired and you like, oh man, do I want to go do a 3-hour banger on TTNL? But it's you guys can, I'm sure you guys know, you may not feel like it, and it's strangely therapeutic almost every time. Like last night I was so tired and I said to Phil, I'm like, we got to go do this fucking book club with Zorich. And then after we were done, I'm like, man, that was so much fun. But it's, you know, it's a nice little reality check, you know, getting away from reality and hanging out with some people that we love and respect, just like you guys. So it's always fun. It's a great release, and you know, coverage moving forward. Ivan, you know, you've been hanging out with us on Draft Mob, and I know Cars is going to be back here soon and getting involved. And this off season is already starting. Super Bowl is this Sunday. Obviously, who the fuck cares about that? Go Chiefs. Actually, real quick, let's go around.
Nagy getting a fucking ring. Fuck that shit.
No, I don't give a fuck. He didn't have anything to do with it. That's all.
He's gonna get one though if they win.
Oh yeah, no, I don't give a shit about that. I can't live through another Eagles Super Bowl.
I got
either way, either Eagle win or lose. There's gonna be Eagle fans eating shit off the street. Either way.
Oh yeah,
so that's all I want to watch.
Ivan,
oh my god,
what's your pick?
My pick? Honestly, I don't really have a dog in the fight, but I'm gonna go with the Eagles. Go with the Eagles. I think it's gonna come down to a field goal. It's gonna come real close to a 3-point game, but yeah, I think it's.
And they double doink it. Wouldn't that be sweet revenge if they double?
Honestly, I wouldn't care. Like if they I feel like it's gonna be the Eagles just because of that Kansas City defense, but I wouldn't give a shit if they double doinked it and lost. Either I'd be like,
yeah,
whatever.
Minor, like I said, minor selfish reasons. I just don't want to deal with the family implications. But if I had 10 large in my pocket and I had to push it all to the center of the table and bet on a team, man, they are just fucking stacked. That team, they are.
They've been the most consistently good team all year long. I mean,
they're the most
complete.
They're
well, I think they're
going to be a close game, though.
I think the defense is going to run down the home, similar to that Bucks Super Bowl. Yep. I really think that they might be putting a lot of pressure on Pat Mahomes with the fucked up ankle.
And when you have AJ Brown and Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert and Miles Sanders can make an impact, and take all of those guys away, and you still have Jalen Hurts back there with his feet, and that to me is the aspect nobody's talking about. Is Jalen Hurts' feet,
and not to mention Mahomes' best weapon is dealing with an injury. So yeah, we'll see. Hopefully it's a good game. Hopefully it's better than the national championship game we had to deal with.
Is Gronk going to make the field goal?
Two.
I'm betting that. Gronk is. Yeah,
he's doing a field goal.
He's kicking a field goal, and you can bet on it.
No one cares.
Bet on that shit.
So yeah. Who knows? We'll see.
I don't know. I might throw some money on that.
Yeah. Fucking Gronk is a man.
I don't want to see Rihanna. I don't want to see Rihanna.
Oh, Rihanna's gonna be dope too, of course.
But Cherie, why don't you kick us off with your shout outs? And these Keepin It 100 getting done before 11 p.m. This is
all right.
Yeah, no, I didn't have to dip out early.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make my bedtime. Shout out to Brian. I know this is the first time joining us back live. Brian Sanchez. So shout out to him. I know he's dealing with some stuff, so sending our love to you, Brian. And shout out to all the fans, man. Y'all be hanging in there through these 3-hour shows. I be in the background struggling sometimes, and I love our guests, but I'm just not a person that likes to stay. Well, I stay up late, but anyway, I struggle with sitting at a desk because I'm at a desk all day working. So it does get tiring. So I'm not going to lie. So shout out to all the fans that show us love and are hanging in the chat, commenting, interacting throughout these shows that we have. We do appreciate it. And, the love that y'all show us on social media, we love y'all for it. So thank you all. This shout out is strictly for the fans. I love all.
There you go.
Thanks.
Ivan Vargas.
Yeah, shout out Phil. I know, like we said, family first. So shout out him. I know he had to run and take care of stuff. But yeah, shout out him. Shout out you guys. Shout out everybody in the chat. Keep it short and sweet. Have a good night. I know we're wrapping things up here, but I'm excited, man. Like, we have a Super Bowl coming up this Sunday. Then we got Draft Mob again coming next week. Like, it's coming fast, man. Everything's coming very, very, very clip it. It's coming very, very fast.
Ivan's wife just said, "Yeah, no shit, Ivan."
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Oh.
If things are moving, you know what I'm saying. So like, I'm getting excited about this draft, man. I really am. I'm thinking the Bears are going to go trade down, but like we're looking at Will Anderson and stuff like that. It's just been very exciting. So I've been looking forward to that. So be aware come Monday. But yeah, I guess Super Bowl, yay.
Where's the food, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I'm fucking rooting for. I think the Eagles, but it's not like I'm fucking rooting for them. You know what I mean? It's just like, oh, this is a game.
My brother-in-law is having a Super Bowl party, and he's talking to you. I'm like, maybe I'll just get sick or something. I don't know if I want to even deal with it, but hey, I'd be the same way if the Bears were in it. But I don't know how you guys are, like big games like that. I don't want 50 fucking people around me.
I am with you, Shane.
I don't want a bunch of people saying, I'm just here for the commercials. I'm like, good.
Oh, no.
Go fucking watch it at your house then. I don't want you here.
Talking about if the Bears are in the Super Bowl? Yeah. No.
Period. Like, I just want to watch the game. Please shut up.
Yeah.
I hate.
I'm not worried about the food, drinks, nothing. If the Bears are in the Super Bowl, I would be. I can remember last time I didn't go to work for 2 days after the Colts game. It wrecked me. And yeah, I'm not I don't know how people go with, 150 other people around them screaming. And
I used to be the bar guy, like going on Sundays, go to the bar, get some food, watch the game. But in my somewhat old age with kids and shit now, so you can't do that. But also I couldn't even imagine just trying to sit there watching the game and chaos around you. I'm good. I'm good right here.
I'd punch a motherfucker.
Before the pandemic, I did have a little like kind of dive bar because they have a Chicago Bears bar here in DC. But that one I don't like going to because it is so crowded. But I did have a little dive bar that I used to go to, small bar. They would just put the game on one TV for me. Yeah. That was before the pandemic. Once the pandemic came and Sunday ticket became a priority.
So Claude, if the Bears were in the Super Bowl, would you be watching it at home or would you be with Phil? You'd have to be with Phil,
Oh, no,
right?
I'll be with Phil, of course.
Yeah.
Of course. It's so fun watching the game.
I've thought about Super Bowl. I've thought about the process when we win the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. What BHL is going to be like? Because I go back because you guys didn't even get to experience this. The BHL green room when the Bears got the #1 pick, Vargas and I were essentially snorting lines of coke off the fucking desk. I mean, it was. Phil comes into it. We weren't really doing coke, but I'm just saying it was that we were going fucking crazy. Phil comes in. He's like, "What the fuck?" And Vargas and I are losing our shit. And it was raw emotion. There was no fake bullshit about it. And I said, I can't imagine.
I mean, I would think though, if the Bears are in the Super Bowl in the near future, we got to at least be in that city, right? I mean, I'm going to be in that city.
Yeah, I don't even know if I want to
watch it.
I don't
you
even
wouldn't
know.
You wouldn't want to be there.
I don't think so.
To celebrate with other. No,
I don't know. It's. I get it.
For me, I would love.
Or be in Chicago. We're in Chicago watching in Chicago. No,
I've been to that Cubs one. That was insane. Like I said, I'm expecting. I don't know if it's going to bring 5 million people to the parade. But I'm expecting chaos in the city if the Bears win the Super Bowl. I'm expecting like you can't be going outside driving around for a while.
Yeah.
I would probably just at least want to be in. Like, I definitely would want to go to the game just because I'm one of them people that if I'm in a live game, I want to have something vested. So of course I want it to be the Bears. I want to experience the Super Bowl. But I would love for it to be the Bears. If I can't be at the Super Bowl for the Bears, I would love to just be in the city of Chicago just to see how that feels because I was 2 when it happened.
See, I'm crazy. If I flew to Chicago to be with a bunch of Bears fans and watch the Super Bowl and they lost, I'd feel like that was because I didn't maintain my routine that got us there. Yeah. So. But yeah, no, it'd be interesting.
I'm saying we meet up. The TTNL crew meets up. And watches it together, not with like. Random.
No, that'd be dope.
But it's still breaking his ritual.
Yeah, that'd be dope. But we'll
think
of we'll make the decision.
Phil would be a hot fucking mess in the the DDP rant to open up BHL. I don't even know if we'd be able to do it. I'd be a hot fucking mess.
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be crazy.
If they won, won, we just need one mic.
Oh my
and
God.
just
Your
go
mother's
around
a
the
cunt.
room.
Your mother's a cunt. Yeah, I would be doing. Oh my God. Go on Facebook Live. Call everybody. Yeah. I can love it. Oh man, makes me happy to think about. But yeah, we're gonna get there, and they're gonna do it. Things are different, man. And I know this is a crazy shout out, but I feel like they've course corrected. They made the right move. It started back in April of 2021 when they, Cars had the epic TTNL moment of all time. The Bears traded up and puts his arms up. To me, that's where it all started. They didn't course correct with Nagy and Pace until the next, after the next off season, but slow. Now we got the quarterback. We got the number 1 pick in the draft. Ted's gone. We got Kevin Warren in here. They're building a new stadium.
A lot of young talent.
Yeah, and
don't forget. The Bengals had 4 wins the year before they went to the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
so
Jacksonville had the number 1 pick in the draft last year.
Yeah,
and they made strides.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's I hear people. I know Deion Miller. We love her here, but she was on I forget what podcast she was on. And they said to her, and she's like, "Oh, they're 5 seasons away." I'm like, come on, it's not. If they're 5 seasons away, that means that Justin Fields is not the guy.
Yeah,
that's how important QB1 is. But yeah, we'll see. I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves. But this is
honestly, I'm shooting for 7 wins. Like if it's me, I think the Bears should aim for 7 wins. Like you as fans should honestly. 7 wins should be the goal. That's a reasonable turnaround from what you are. That means Justin is progressing. That means the team is progressing. You were able to win those games that you weren't. Like I know we talk about the games being close, but you are what you are at a certain point, and that the Bears were not good enough to win those games. I know woulda, coulda, shoulda, but that's not what it is.
Well, come on, Ivan. There was probably 4 games that we beat ourselves. 4 or 5 years.
It felt like
or the refs had 1 or 2 that they fucking took.
We know, Ivan, the Detroit game was taken from us.
The Miami game.
We could say a couple games were with the refs or whatever, but for me, I'm just saying the Bears are exactly who they were. Like that, we said it. We saw how bad they played. Like going down the stretch. Like I thought they were going to at least try to sneak away with one of those games, but then losing 10 straight.
Yeah.
Like that's exactly who they are, no matter what.
The defense was obviously the issue because our offense was averaging almost 30 points a game. So you should be winning more than 3 fucking games, putting up as many points as we were putting up. So, but you're right. We lost them, and that's it. Got to just move on.
Yeah, and nobody at the point we're at right now, nobody wants to go back and get one more win. Because then you don't have the number 1 pick in the draft, and that was the point. That we have it now, and hopefully the I don't want to give too much away like we talked about with Coach O, but I'm an Alabama guy. I love Will Anderson, but if Coach is like, no, you got to get the blue chip guy, and he's like, what would be your decision? I said, what would be my decision? I said, the only decision I'd be making is what color I'm fucking signing off on that trade with, what color ink I'm using. If they're throwing me all that shit, because if you get, Phil talked about it. I don't think Will Anderson is a generational talent. I think I think he's awesome, and that's fine. I think generational gets thrown around way too much with players. I don't think he's generational. Is he good enough to go number 1 in this draft? Hell yeah. If you stay at number 1, take Will Anderson and call it a day. Is he a generational talent? I don't think so. And that's not a bad thing.
Talk to me after 3 years. After 3 years
Anything
in the NFL, yeah, you could probably. If he trajects that way and he has a great career, yeah, maybe. But yeah.
And I'm not even 100% positive if the Bears stayed at number 1 that they're even going to take Will Anderson. I'll be 100% honest. So we'll see.
looking at both players, Will Anderson and Jalen Carter, like you had said on Draft Mob, it's night and day with the motor.
Yep.
Like Jalen Carter, he's a little bigger, and he does work through a lot of guys. I mean, he's constantly – you have to put somebody on him at all times, like or two, and that's what he gets nonstop. So it's like you could kind of say that that's part of the issue, but there's more to that. I think he needs to be a little bit more in shape, and I think he needs a little bit more on to work a little bit more on the cardio.
And he was playing with an MCL injury for most of the year and an ankle injury on top of it. So that's where they have, when you hear due diligence, that's where that comes into play, is you have to sit down with them. And we talked about this with our patrons. You have to put him up on the board, and you have to show 5 plays where he is loafing. And all right, Jalen, you have all the talent in the world. You're telling me you should be number 1. I hold that pick. So I determine if you're going to go there or not. Not you. You're going to tell me why I have these 5 plays up here. Why are you doing this? And if he can't answer it, then we have a big issue with it. And then you put a little red flag next to his name. So it's, and this is the thing where when I talk about Ryan Poles, when we say he needs to be a dog, he needs to be relentless with this shit. He does. He's got to go in there and listen. Teams hire private investigators to find out everything about these guys. That's real life shit. And you can't take a guy at number 1 and have him be okay. Because if he's just okay, then it's a massive failure by this regime. It's got to be the guy has to be top end talent. He's got to be a guy that's getting game planned for each and every week, if that's where you're going. So it's going to be interesting. I don't want to go too far down into this rabbit hole. We were doing shout outs and got off here a little bit, but Claude, you got your shout out.
Yeah, I'll make them quick. Obviously, shout out to you guys, Phil, Steph, the Tilshin family. Shout out to them. Brian Sanchez, ditto, Cherie, going through stuff, everybody else going through stuff. And then shout out a couple dudes in the chat. I saw Joey Marshall from Phoenix checking in, and Fox Bat Trace and whatever from Denver. So shout out to you guys.
Shout the dude out and just gave him the whatever.
Yeah, whatever. I don't know your name. You know what I'm talking about. You're from Denver.
Not good with words.
New guy. Yeah, that's it.
Perfect. No, sending all my love and support to Phil. I know it's we talked a little bit today, and it's just I've been there. You know how it is when you're dealing with family, and you're like, oh, this is a good day, and then tomorrow something else happens, and then something else happens, and it snowballs, and it's not just it's animals and your family, kids, and mom and dads and everything. It's part of getting old. It sucks to see. I think Ivan, I think you and I were talking about it. I talked about my mom and stuff like that. It sucks to see your mom and dad get old, but I said at the same time I have a lot of
Shane froze.
Oh, Shane.
Shane, you froze.
We stayed too long.
No, he is definitely frozen. So, all right. Well, Ivan, Cherie.
Aw. Well, I guess you're going to close out.
Yeah, I guess
He's closing out. I guess he's not coming back. He's gone. He's still frozen in the green room. Look at him. All
right, guys. For Phil, for Shane, for Cherie, for Claudio the barber, and everybody else here at The Tape Never Lies, good night. Peace.
Breaking news. The Tape Never Lies Network. Breaking news.
I fucked your mom.